On a side note, I want to cover the Theoric Fund and the dominating role it will play in the politics and actions of Athens in the late 4th century. Coming out of the social war of 355 BCE, Athens was a different city and had to decide its new policies going forward. The cost of war was a huge drain on the Athenian treasury. War fleets were incredibly expensive to construct, and their specialized crew of rowers needed to be paid. Also, Athens' heavy reliance on mercenaries cost them 1,000 talents alone. Athens was not the economic superpower it once was during its imperial height in the 5th century BCE. Its annual income was at a measly 130 talents a year compared to the 1,000 talents a year under the Delian League. Furthermore, Athens was still embroiled in two other major conflicts. Firstly, with the king of Macedon, Philip II, over the city of Eubulus off the Thracian coast, and secondly, supporting the Phocian tyrants against most of the central Greek states in the Third Sacred War. What direction this new Athens would take, and how to remedy their current situation, was under fierce debate in the assembly. The major orators of the day all pushed forward their own opinions on Athenian policy going forward. Many of the great orators of the day, including the philosopher Isocrates and the famous historian Xenophon, tried their hand at directing Athens towards their vision for a revitalized city. Isocrates argued for Athens to forego its imperialistic dreams of recapturing past glories under the Delian League, and instead seek peaceful relations with the Greek world. Xenophon echoed a similar policy, but focused more on sweeping economic reforms with greater rights for resident foreigners, known as metics, reopening the abundant silver mines of Laurion, and the creation of a central welfare fund. However, both Isocrates and Xenophon's proposals could not persuade the assembly, but the voice that won out in the assembly and who managed to institute a mixture of both of their policies with the creation of the Theoric Fund was the orator Eubulus. Eubulus had been an up-and-coming politician leading up to the social war under the patronage of Diophantus, a well-established orator. In the 350s, Eubulus managed to establish a humble financial board called the Theoric Fund. Its goal was simply to subsidize the cost of festival tickets for Athenian citizens throughout the year. Festivities in Athens were a core cultural and religious part of life. No Greek state had more festivals than Athens. Originally, seating in these festivals were free, but this often led to fights over the mad dash to seat thousands of people at once. Thus, a price was levied of 2 obols for tickets that were used to improve the various amphitheatres. But this would prove too much for many of the poorest citizens of Athens. As such, a welfare program was established. However, Athens' economy after the social war, being so weak, did not have the finances for many expenses. So after all necessary expenditure at the state, the surplus was given to the Theoric Fund instead of typically going to the military fund. At first, this was not much more than 15 talents, but by partially instituting Xenophon's ideas of better accommodation for the medics, and by reopening the silver mines, the finances of Athens bounced back from 130 talents to 400 talents annually by the 340s. Since the Theoric Fund would maintain a monopoly on all surpluses, it began to grow in responsibilities. The Theoric Fund was made infallible by Eubulus, meaning they could only be used for itself and not in any other way. Even to suggest otherwise was subject to a fine. So the Theoric Fund began to absorb other responsibilities of Athenian finances, such as civil works, maintaining the docks, and the naval arsenal. The manager of the Theoric Fund began to have great influence over Athenian expenditure, as although budgets were approved by the assembly, the choice between expensive, distant military ventures across the Aegean or a greater budget to the Theoric Fund, which they would see immediate gain from, meant the decision was easily influenced. The Theoric Fund would bloat to about 100 talents of the annual budget, but would be put to good use to improve the city. Under Eubulus, the construction of public works, increases in the size of the navy, and the improvements to the Piraeus saw prosperity in Athens not seen since the golden times under Pericles. Eubulus revitalized the city through reinvestment rather than interfering in the affairs of others. The Theoric Fund became known as the glue of democracy due to its rejuvenation of Athens and the pivotal role it played in keeping the city's finances in check. Eubulus's role in diverting funds from the military to the Theorica would give his pro-peace party hegemony over politics in Athens for most of the 350s and 340s, and lead to a long-needed period of Athenian prosperity. Eubulus would often use his influence to make or break proposals, especially costly military enterprises, unless they were deemed completely necessary. However, this led Athens to take a largely non-interventional policy in Greek affairs, and this explains their caution in involving themselves in conflicts in the coming decades. When Rhodes would return to Athens, pleading to rejoin the Confederacy if it would aid them against the Persian supporters in the city, Eubulus's party would deny aid. In the Third Sacred War, the role of Athens was quite minimal. When the megapolitans of Arcadia asked for Athens' help to drive off the Spartans, they would not send out a military force. But most importantly, their reluctance to commit forces against the Macedonian king, Philip II, would stop them from putting up a proper resistance to his rise to hegemony. For as long as the military was hampered by the bloat of the Theoric Fund, it was unable to act decisively against Philip, and Athens would eventually know subjugation under the Macedonian king. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe and check out my other videos. And if you enjoyed the music, why not subscribe to Leander's channel as well? Thanks for watching.